Alright everyone, you may notice a marginal increase in the quality of these videos as far as the audio-visual content goes. That's because I'm using the other computer now. I've made a little bit of a switch up in the way I'm doing things here. Anyway, we've got to talk about Louisville, of course, the main news of the day, as predicted, because last night, like when I went to sleep, of course it was still midday over there, and so people were protesting, but they weren't rioting, because the rioters come out at night. That's when things get rowdy. People have been marching around, they get a little bit, off of it, and then the curfew hits and people don't go home, and then the looters come out because they know, hey, the police will be distracted. I'll be 2 blocks away smashing some windows and making thousands of bucks, and I won't even get in trouble because the local DA will probably side with me and give me no bail. Anyway, what happened is that this is over the Breonna Taylor case, which Elon Omar is obsessed with, by the way. Now, there are 2 versions of events. There's what happened, and there's what people appear to believe happened, if they watch CNN or listen to Elon Omar. What people believe happened is that Breonna Taylor was peacefully sleeping with her loving boyfriend, and the cops decided to try to break down the door, and the boyfriend decided to defend her because he figured it was her abusive ex showing up to kill her or rape her or something. So he opened fire, and they were gunned down in a hail of bullets by the evil police, who are obviously racist pigs. That's the version of events CNN wants you to believe. That's the version of events Hillary Clinton wants you to believe. Now let's look at the real version of events. What actually happened? There was no no-knock raid. The police did knock and clearly identify themselves. Her boyfriend decided to open fire at a closed door, not even necessarily knowing who was on the other side at the time, breaking the law in the process, a shot at them, and they returned fire. Breonna Taylor was not, at the time, in bed. She was in the hallway, which kind of irrelevant, and unfortunately died. Now, the grand jury was convened to decide what these folks should be charged with, the officers. One of them was charged. I believe there were 3 involved in this, and got 3 counts of wanton endangerment. Now, this was not because of firing into Taylor's apartment, because of course there was fire coming from the apartment. The cops at that point arguably were acting in self-defense as just normal citizens, not even just as officers. That being said, one of the officers apparently accidentally discharged rounds into the adjacent apartments, and so wanton endangerment applies. These are low-level crimes. This is sort of like a time-served probation, overnight in jail and restitution sort of thing. Opens up potentially for a civil case by the people that were aggrieved, who's the pain and suffering and stuff. My kids were scarred for life. They could sue civilly, but it's not really it's not a felony. It's not a significant criminal charge. Although it would have been nice if this hadn't happened this way, we have to look at reality the way it really is and look at the law the way it really is written. The boyfriend in this situation did not have any reasonable fear for his life. At this time, he did not know what was on the other side of the door, and therefore it was illegitimate for him to open fire on these officers. Even if he believed it was Breonna Taylor's abusive ex-boyfriend trying to break into the apartment, again knocking and saying, well, it's the police, opening fire on a closed door is just not necessarily a good thing to do. Now, what's happened in the fallout of this, of course, is that people, predictably, as we all knew, started to riot. And unfortunately, it looks like shots were fired at police not even that long ago. Of course, right now, it's still the middle of the night over there. So fairly recently, it sounds like a vehicle sped away shortly after, so it may have been like people drove up, opened fire, and then left, shooting at the police officers in Louisville during this rioting that was going on. They've thrown firebombs. They've attacked a courthouse, they've burned Wendy's, so to speak. I'm beginning to see a pattern here, and I'm beginning to see another pattern. You look at Elon Omar, or Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, all these other people, and their response to this. They have spent the last month rambling about Breonna Taylor, justice for Breonna Taylor, she didn't have done nothing wrong, and therefore police are evil and racist and piggish, and throwing the whole nation under the bus. Then actual violence breaks out here, premeditated violence, not like Breonna Taylor's boyfriend opening fire on the arresting officers that were there and getting shot in return because the officers feared for their lives, and she happened to be collateral damage. That's very goddamn sad. I'm really sorry. She didn't do anything wrong. but it's an unfortunate situation. Now you've got a situation where you've got people attacking the officers with firearms. We're not talking about a BB gun or a paintball gun. We're talking live fire, real ammunition, real weapons of war, as Biden would probably call them if the person firing weren't a leftist, being used by Antifa and BLM and their various looting sympathizers and inner city street gangs, of course. You got some inner city street gang member, some Crip or Blood or something. They'd love to have the kudos for having blown a cop's head off. If they can do that in the context of a riot already happening so they know the officers are too distracted to respond, they'll probably do a drive-by too. This could have been just a gang member for all we know. Now you've got real actual violence, and you've got, in a single night, you've probably got millions of dollars of damage in Louisville. Thankfully, Kentucky is a stand-your-ground castle doctrine state. I've already told everyone who watches me, you have the right to defend yourself, your family, your friends, your community, your property. In Kentucky, that's not contested. Thankfully, you're in a state where you are reasonably protected against communist rioting thugs. You have the right and indeed the responsibility to respond accordingly. I disavow all forms of violence, but self-defense is legitimate. That being said, businesses burn, courthouses burn, cars get attacked, people marching down the street, and it was funny because, of course, during the day, they're so peaceful. They just march down the street holding their signs and stuff. The criminals crawl out of the woodwork around dusk, around when the curfew happens to take effect, and they start throwing shit around and spray painting things and raising hell. My question for the Democratic Party is, how long are you going to endorse this? Because that's fundamentally what you're doing. When Biden comes and says, well, violence is never the answer. Disavow Antifa and BLM by name. We know who are conducting these attacks. We know who are throwing the Molotovs. We know who the people who are organizing this. Name them by actual name and disavow them. And pledge to do something about it. Why would any reasonable person in Louisville or Seattle or Portland or Chicago or any of the big cities across the fucking country that have had this problem, why would any reasonable person vote for a Biden-Harris ticket? You've abandoned 30 years of being arguably too authoritarian and pro-tough on crime in order to mollycoddle a bunch of literal communists who are rioting in the streets, conducting themselves in only the most vile of manners. Literally shooting at cops now, and they won't get disavowed. They'll vaguely disavow violence. It's funny, because the legacy media, these corporate hack crook billionaires that run the show with regards to news communication, they harped on Trump over and over. Do you disavow David Duke? Well, you didn't do it quick enough. You didn't do it strong enough. You must love the Ku Klux Klan. Do you disavow this hateful person, that YouTuber that we happen to paint as a Nazi? Oh, he didn't disavow them quick enough. Oh my God, like when he wouldn't disavow Rittenhouse there, who acted in self-defense. Ironically enough, that video that I shared out, by the way, like a fucking month ago is now part of the defense's own entries into evidence. Oh, how funny that is, since I saw it first on the New York Times. That's fun. But then Biden, nobody ever asked him a fucking goddamn question about Antifa or BLM. These are largely BLM members and sympathizers conducting the violence. The looters are adjacent to it. The looters aren't usually the shooters. They're a little bit separate. Looter is someone, an opportunist who has come along. There's already a riot going on, so they decided to do a smash and grab. It's not on the same order as the kind of politically motivated and sometimes racially motivated bigoted crimes that we're seeing from literally avowed communists in our streets in multiple U.S. cities. The time has come to pressure the Democratic Party to belly up to the bar and fucking do something about it. You've been whipping the fans of hate, the flames of hate. You've been whipping these people into a frenzy now, telling them that the President of the United States is Adolf Hitler, and that all of you are going to get shot by evil, racist cops, and that the system is fundamentally broken and it systemically needs to be overhauled, and we need Green New Deal and all of these things. You have whipped this frenzy up. Now it is your turn to calm things down. When Biden comes out and says, well, this is Trump's America, no. This is blue state, largely. And in the case of Louisville, of course in Kentucky, a state that generally leans to the right, towards the Republicans, Rand Paul land essentially, you're talking about the corporate media whipping people up into a frenzy, literally lying to them and giving them a false version of events, telling them Breonna Taylor was just sleeping in bed and her boyfriend was defending her from the evil racists. That didn't happen. And it absolutely didn't happen. It provably didn't. There's a reason that the grand jury that was convened, a largely independent body, this isn't some Trump-appointed federal judge making this decision. This wasn't a room full of Ku Klux Klan members. This was just a normal grand jury proceeding. They're only recommending these 3 charges on one of the officers with regards to stray bullets. That's a perfectly independent thing. And it's funny, these people are essentially saying that anytime the normal function of the law, which presumes innocence, or at least is supposed to, and I realize it doesn't always work, and I believe in reforming that system too. Half the people in prison shouldn't be there, to be sure. Anytime that system delivers a verdict that they don't like, they intend to go out and commit more crimes. Well then fucking throw the book at them. Throw them in federal prison. Don't even let the states and municipalities handle it anymore. Send in the feds, send in the goats, and fucking round these people up and put them in supermax for a while. Let them cool their heels. They want to build IEDs. They want to deploy bioterrorism by throwing their potentially AIDS-infected shit at people. Then throw the book at them. Enough is enough. It's time to get back to business so that normal people can do their thing. By the way, another reason to vote for Trump. Get the next SCOTUS justice in. I don't care who he chooses. Pro-gun justice regardless of those big 3 that are on the list. Let's overhaul the system, defend the Second Amendment, and have nationwide stand your ground, nationwide castle doctrine, the recension of all state-level gun control, the repeal of the NFA, and let people defend themselves, their families, and their businesses. That's what we need as a nation. If you think that black people are so systemically underserved and there's crime in the inner cities and problems, let them arm up and defend themselves then. Let them form citizen militias and defend their communities. I don't begrudge them that at all. The real problem are a bunch of opportunistic thug hacks like Sharpton and Elon Omar who are constantly fanning hate in these communities, lying to these people, giving them false versions of events, and then sending them out to riot, and then complaining when they're arrested. So that they have a rap sheet. They're useful idiots for idiots like Sharpton. That's essentially what BLM, half the members, boil down to anyway. Antifa shows up, lily white as it is, with daddy's credit card to buy all the bottles and kerosene they need for their fucking explosives, and then they get let go by some moron prosecutor that's been handpicked by George Soros. Enough is enough. And this is billionaire funded too. And I'm not just talking about my boogeyman George Soros, of course. There are other people that are involved. Silicon Valley right now. You'll get banned if you defend Kyle Rittenhouse on half a dozen Silicon Valley sites. Objective self-defense. That's frowned upon. People shooting at cops? Oh, well, the jury's still out on whether they were politically motivated or not. They showed up during the Breonna Taylor riots and decided to take some pot shots at the line of cops over there. I don't know what their motivation could have been. Maybe they were just, they didn't realize the cops were there. They thought that they were cardboard targets because it's the myopia convention. The myopia shooting contest was that day and they got confused. That's just bullshit. That's about all. Peace out.